Hello, and thank you for tuning in today. Now, a few weeks ago, I sat here in this chair and told you that we were going to talk about death, in particular, the Black Plague. Now, I'm back in this chair, and again, we're going to talk about death, in particular, how some of the ways you might go are a little less than, shall we say, dignified, or in some cases, really, really embarrassing. Now, just like today, in the Middle Ages, there were thousands of ways that you could go.
And I know them all.
Excuse me. Oh, yeah. Hey, what are you doing in here?
I'm always here. I get so lonely.
Listen, we all get lonely from time to time. It's all part of being alive. Okay, you can stay. Just don't do anything.
Very well. Might you and I be friends?
You invite a person over for a chess game and they just never leave, do they? Anyway, today's subject is like I said, the more embarrassing ways some monarchs have gone. Now, today, our roll of honor involves Edmund Ironside, who died in 1016. Richard the Lionheart. He met his end as well before the 1200s. And Edward II, who went in a very painful way, if these stories are to believe. Now, I'm going to tell you outright, all we really have is stories. There aren't any really hard facts because over the centuries, well, these stories have been added to again and again. And so sometimes it's really hard to determine which is true and which one just makes for a good bit of cringe-worthy reading. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, died on the toilet in 1977. Now, he wasn't the first royal to meet his end in such a place. There have been many others, and we're going to talk about one of them right now. None other than Edmund Ironside, who died in 1016. Now, we're going to set the stage for you a little, just so you understand how he came to, well, that end. You see, at this point in English history, England was ruled by the Saxons, and they were constantly under attack by the Vikings. Now, Edmund's father, Ethelred the Unready, had actually lost the country to the Danes in 1013. Now, in 1014, his opponent in that fight, Svein Forkbeard, yes, that really was his name, died, and his son, Canute, lost England to Ethelred in battle. Now, Ethelred dies, and his son, Edmund, takes over. Now, he's actually a pretty skilled warrior in his own right. And he has a number of battles with Canute, who is currently trying to take England back for the Vikings. All right, well, things aren't going great for Edmund because, well, a number of battles, and he is losing. So he and Canute actually do come up with a peaceful solution to the problem. Mainly, Edmund moves to the west, and Canute gets the north and east. This is a plan that works pretty well for about 6 weeks. Well, one night in November of 1016, Edmund has a strong call of nature. And needing to take care of pressing matters, he goes to the privy, which is kind of a walled-in cesspit. You go in, squat, do your business, you get out. Well, when he went in there to take care of business, there was a Viking waiting for him in the pit, who the instant Edmund sat down, the Viking went up with his dagger. Goodbye, Edmund. Now, it's entirely possible that it was done with a spear because, you don't get a great deal of reach and there's no guarantee of hitting your target. And it's also been suggested that it was a booby trap privy with a spring-loaded crossbow in there. Now, did this actually happen? Probably not. But that's a story we've had for several hundred years. It's just as likely that he died of, well, wounds in battle. But, let's face it, which sounds better? Wounds or someone waiting for you and striking from below? Actually, I gotta tell you, I think I'd go with the wounds in battle. It's just right. My armor here is named Richard, after King Richard III of England, who died in 1485, the last English king to die in battle. But we're not here to talk about him today. We're here to talk about Richard I, Richard the Lionheart, the King Richard who ruled England between 1189 and 1199. And probably only spent 6 months living in the actual country and actually viewed England as a tax base to pay for his various campaigns during the Third Crusades and his wars with King Philip II of France. What a guy. See, he was actually a very skilled warrior. He was also very brutal. He didn't go rescuing the fair maiden. He's usually the reason why the fair maiden needed to be rescued in the first place. All right, now how did this man go? Well, he was a great symbol to the Victorians for their burgeoning empire. If you ignore the fact that he, all the gains he made during the Third Crusade actually were lost, and on his way home, he was actually captured by Duke Leopold of Austria, and then later handed over to King Henry VI of the Holy Roman Empire. And the ransom that they charged England was 150,000 marks, which was about 2 to 3 years' income for England at the time. So taxes were raised. Every dime that we scraped up was scraped up to pay for his ransom. Oh, to show you family loyalty, his brother John, the same John who figures in all the stories about Robin Hood, he actually tried lowballing Henry VI, offering him 80,000 pounds to keep Richard in place. Didn't happen. And King Philip II sent a nice little note to John about Richard when Richard was released. It went, "Look to your own, the devil is loose." Anyway, Richard gets home and he promptly leaves again to fight wars with Philip II in France. By the way, Richard was the Duke of Normandy, Anjou, and Aquitaine. Right. So he actually liked France better than he liked England. And in fact, he once said that he would sell London if he could find a buyer. So this is the great noble warrior king. How did he die? He died being a bill collector. Okay. The truth is, he was in France on a military campaign. Now, word gets to him that a lord that is living on land that Richard owns has found a treasure trove. Yeah. Now, I cannot pronounce the name of the castle. It's in French, and my French is 30 years old. So I'm just going to put it down at the bottom of the screen. You can read it. So he besieges the castle. Now, the castle doesn't have a great deal of defense, but it has some. So they are there surrounding this castle. And on this particular day, in 1199, Richard isn't wearing his armor. Now, either because he doesn't think he really needs it, or he just thinks being without armor in a fight is cool. Well, this didn't work out for him. Now, armor at the time was chainmail armor, which I've covered in another video. And he would have been wearing padding underneath it. And this would have provided some protection. A crossbow bolt at close range is absolutely deadly. From the distance he was probably shot at, not so much. Armor would have helped. But, and here's where that comes in at, he got hit by a crossbow bolt in the shoulder next to the neck. Now they managed to break off the bolt, and they had to surgically remove the barbed tip. These are the days before antibiotics. Infection set in, and he died not too long after that, cradled in his mother's arms. Before he died, the crossbowman was brought before him, and he pardoned him. Said, let him go and give him 100 shillings. Great magnanimous gesture, which his men totally ignored once Richard was in the ground. So, that's how Richard the Lionheart went. Not from a great military campaign, but from a crossbow bolt fired by a man using a frying pan as a shield, and the lack of proper antibiotics. Edward I was a cunning warrior and a skilled politician. He subdued Wales and managed to turn Scotland into a vassal state, at least for a little while. It's a pity that his son, Edward II, didn't have any of those traits. In fact, mostly what we remember about Edward II were the names Piers Gaveston and how Edward II died.
Go ahead. Tell them.
I'm getting to that. Thank you. Anyway, Edward II didn't know how to read the room. When he took the throne in 1307, he heaped honor upon his best friend, Piers Gaveston. This didn't go over well with the barons, and the barons threatened revolt. Edward was forced to exile him, and then Edward decided to sneak him back into the country. This did lead to open revolt, in which Edward II, Piers Gaveston, and Edward's wife Isabella had to run for it. In the end, Piers Gaveston got the chop, and Edward goes back to being king and making the same bad decisions he made before as to who he decided to heap honors on and take advice from. This, by the way, was the Despencer family, Hugh the Elder and Hugh the Younger. Well, the revolt that came as a result of their presence in his life was actually squashed in Edward's benefit, and this is the only time that ever happened. Now, later on, because of impending war between Edward II and France, Edward sent his wife, along with the other diplomats, to try to talk sense into King Charles, who, by the way, was Isabella's brother. You'd think that would have worked out for him. No, it didn't. Oh, he was forced to have to bend the knee to King Charles, well, because Edward was also a duke in France, and you held on to your lands by bending the knee to the king in charge. Edward II got out of this by, well, giving the lands to his son, future Edward III, having the kid bend the knee, and everything's hunky-dory. Only Isabella doesn't want to come home. She has kind of had her fill of the weak, passive king, Edward II. While there, she meets Roger Mortimer. Now, Roger had been on the receiving end of the animosity from the Despencer family, and he'd had to run for it. Okay, so the two of them meet, become lovers, after they determine that what they have in common is they both hate Edward II. Now, they raise an army, go home, and, well, Hugh Despenser the Elder simply gets hung. Hugh Despenser the Younger gets hung. Parts of his anatomy removed. Disemboweled. Quartered. All while Isabella is watching, eating lunch. At least according to the stories. Edward is caught, put in a cell at Berkeley Castle, and depending on the story, either treated very well or treated very poorly. I kind of like the one where he supposedly is forced to shave using ditch water. That's just me. In the end, he is given a choice. Hand over the crown, your son becomes king. Yes, your wife will technically be in charge, but your son will be king. That's version 1. Version 2, hold on to the crown until we pry it from your cold, dead fingers, and there's no guarantee your son will follow you. He chooses to hand the crown over, his son becomes king, and he, I guess, anticipates a life of ease in Berkeley Castle. Now, I've already told you what the legend is with the red-hot poker. More than likely, he was smothered or poisoned. End result was the same. He was dead, and in large part because he didn't know how to read the room, and he really ticked off his wife. No easy divorces in the Middle Ages.
Now, was that so hard? You were quiet for the others. Why didn't you stay quiet for this one? I got lonely in there.
Hi. Out of character and soon to be out of this costume. Today, you watched 3 stories about 3 English kings who died in, well, embarrassing and less than heroic means. But they were just stories. The truth is, we don't really know how some of them went. What we have is frequently politically motivated histories that, well, we're telling the stories that those historians years after the fact wanted to tell. Historians have spent lifetimes combing through documents from those time periods to determine what really happened. Edward II could have just as easily have died by being smothered or poisoned. But what sounds more dramatic? Holding a pillow over someone's face, or a red-hot poker being shoved? Right. You see, that's just it. The stories sometimes sound better than the actual truth. But I want you to go looking for the actual truth. I mean, don't just listen to a face on the internet. We don't know everything. Some things, but not everything. So spend time. Do some actual research. Don't just use Wikipedia. There's plenty of other sources out there that you can use. If you live in the Florence area, the public library has an excellent history genealogy section that the man in charge of the place, best researcher I know. Anyway, I thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this and my other videos, subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you know when something new is coming. If you're watching this on the Renaissance Fairs YouTube channel, where many of my videos are going to wind up, do the same. Subscribe, hit the bell notification. And as always, stay home, stay safe, and keep